Today we are going to be looking at inequalities. Pause the movie now to write down 2-8 inequalities and their graphs at the top of your paper. Let's first start with a few key vocabulary words. Inequality is a mathematical sentence that contains a greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, or not equal to symbol. It may also contain a variable. An example of an inequality would be y greater than or equal to -5. This particular inequality has a variable in it. The solution of the inequality is any number that makes an inequality true. So in our example of y greater than or equal to -5, -4 is a solution because -4 is greater than or equal to -5. Pause the movie now to write down these vocabulary words and examples. If you are given an inequality, you can graph the solutions on a number line. Let's take a look at the example, y less than 3. First, we need to find all of the numbers less than 3. 2 is less than 3, so that is one of our solutions. 1 is also less than 3, so that is another one of our solutions. We can continue down along the number line, 0, -1, -2, and so on are all going to be less than 3. 3 is equal to 3, not less than 3, so that is not part of our solutions. However, we want all of the numbers less than 3, so we can draw an open circle at 3 to show that it is not part of our solution. Then, we can draw a line connecting all of our points along the number line to show all of our solutions to the inequality y less than 3. Pause the movie now to write down this example in your notes. Try graphing the inequality x greater than -1 on your own. Pause the movie to do it in your notes, then press play to learn the answer. Let's first look at the point -1. -1 is equal to -1. Since our inequality is x greater than -1, and -1 is not greater than -1, we know that -1 is not part of our solutions, so we can draw an open circle at -1. Now let's try to figure out what points are greater than -1. -2 is not greater than -1, so that is not one of our solutions. 0 is greater than -1, so 0 is one of our solutions, as is 1, 2, 3, and so on. So we can draw our line from our open circle at -1 to the right along our number line, and that is our solution for x greater than -1. Now let's take a look at the example a less than or equal to -2. Since our inequality is less than or equal to -2, and -2 is less than or equal to itself, we know that -2 is part of our solutions. This means instead of drawing the open circle at -2, we draw a closed circle at -2 to show that it is part of our solutions. Now, we need to plug in numbers for a to figure out which numbers are part of our solution. Let's start with -1. -1 is greater than or equal to -2, not less than or equal to -2, so that is not one of our solutions. -3 is less than or equal to -2, so -3 is one of our solutions, as will be -4, -5, and so on. We can draw a line connecting our closed circle and all our points to show our solutions to a less than or equal to -2. Pause the movie now to copy this example down into your notes. Now try graphing -6 less than or equal to g on your own. Pause the movie, do the work in your notes, then press play to learn the answer. Since we have the inequality less than or equal to, we know that -6 is part of our solutions because it is equal to itself. This means we can draw a closed circle at -6. Now let's plug in some numbers for g to figure out which ones are part of our solution. Let's start with -7. -6 is greater than or equal to -7, not less than or equal to. So -7 is not part of our solutions. Now let's take a look at -5. -6 is less than or equal to -5, so that is part of our solutions, as will be -4, -3, -2, and so on. Now we can shade in our number line, starting with our closed circle at -6 to show our solutions. It is important to note that even though we had the less than or equal to symbol in our inequality, that did not mean that we shaded to the left of our number. In this case, the solution set was to the right of -6. Remember to always plug in numbers for your variable to figure out which direction to shade your graph. Sometimes you may be given a graph and asked to write the inequality. Let's take a look at an example. In this graph, we have an open circle. This tells us that that point is not a part of our solutions, so our inequality symbol will be either a greater than or less than symbol. Since the open circle is at 0, our inequality will be either x greater than 0 or x less than 0. We need to plug in points along our shaded in graph for x to figure out which inequality it is. Let's pick a point on our graph. 1 is a point on our graph. Is 1 greater than 0 or less than 0? It's greater than 0. So we know that our inequality has to be x greater than 0. Pause the movie now to copy this example down in your notes. Try a problem on your own. Pause the movie now, write down the inequality to the graph, then press play to learn the answer. First, we notice that we have a closed circle. This means our inequality will be either greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. This is because that point is part of our solution. Our closed circle is at -1, so our inequality will look like either x greater than or equal to -1 or x less than or equal to -1. Next, we need to plug in points for x to figure out which inequality is true. Since -3 is a point in the shaded region on our number line, let's plug in -3 for x. Is -3 less than or equal to or greater than or equal to -1? -3 is less than or equal to -1. This means that x less than or equal to -1 is our solution. Here are some practice problems for you. For the first 3 problems, graph the inequalities on a number line. For the 4th problem, write the inequality that is shown by the graph. Pause the movie, complete the problems, then have your work checked by your teacher.